We're live in 3, 2.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome in to Leather Brains. As always, your host, Slapdog here, and I am joined by Yeti, who is always here with us on Wednesdays, or usually always here, rather. And we have a special guest here today. We have Dave. Dave, I'm not even going to try and pronounce your last name because I'm probably going to butcher it. Is it Heilman?
Heilman, you nailed it.
Heilman. Okay, perfect. We have Dave here from his tag is Dynasty Dorks. He is a Dynasty fantasy football aficionado. Dave, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you got going on, my friend?
Yeah, Dynasty Dorks on Twitter and TikTok. I work for SGPN, which is Sports Gambling Podcast Network. So I'm the lead Dynasty analyst. You can check us out, SGPN Fantasy Football. We do mock drafts. We do rankings. It's 2 shows a week, so you got the podcast on wherever you listen, and on the YouTube channel, SGPN Fantasy.
Go check them out. I was actually on there a couple weeks ago now.
Yeah.
Great podcast. Super fun. Go check them out. And for all things Dynasty football, Dave is the guy to go to. So, of course, we have Dave here, and he is the Dynasty guy. We're going to be talking about Dynasty football today. We are going to go over some of our sells. So the people who you're trying to offload on your rosters for one reason or another, we've all brought in a couple different players to the table to discuss today. I think it's going to be really, really fun. But before we do that, we have to talk about some of the NFL news that has happened because we want to catch all the brainiacs up. So without further ado, let's get down to business.
Let's get down to business.
Well, the first thing that I would like to discuss is March Gladness. Yeti, it's over. All that free stuff is done.
Say it anymore.
So I know. I was really hoping you were going to give us one more.
I'm going to need like
good
a new
free
tagline going forward.
But our gladness is not over, Yeti. I do want to state that. So for everybody that participated in our March Gladness campaign, I greatly want to say thank you so much. And congratulations to our winners. We got Aaron Big D Davis, P Win Dynasty, Paul, and last and of course least, Can't Stop, Won't Stop. So we appreciate you guys entering as well as everybody else, and congratulations on winning those signed jerseys.
Let's move none of those guys bribed us either, by the way.
No, they didn't. No, it was all natural. Now everybody's gonna think, yeah, they definitely bribed him. There was no bribing that had happened. But let's talk some NFL, gentlemen. So we're gonna start out with the Arizona Cardinals. My team, sadly, they are now rumored to be closer to releasing DeAndre Hopkins, as nobody is willing to take on Hopkins' contract and pay the Cardinals' asking price, as reported by Albert Breer of Sports Illustrated. What do you think, Dave? I mean, is this something that's a good thing for the Cardinal for my team here? Or what are you thinking?
Yeah, it's always frustrating when you're getting rid of a good player and not getting anything back, where it's like, come on, just anything's better than nothing. And, I was in the situation last year with James Bradberry. I'm like, the Giants need draft capital. Bradberry's there, like second, third round pick. Like, I'll be happy with a third round, maybe fourth round pick. And then they release him, and then he goes to the Eagles. And I'm like, come on, like, that's the worst case scenario, man. So, the Cardinals are a team that they have a lot of needs. And, it would be great for them to be able to release to get something back on top of the salary cap implications, and hopefully you at least get one of those. But yeah, losing Hopkins is never a good thing.
No, and you look at it, or how I look at it as a fan, is like, man, the Cowboys sold Amari Cooper for a 5th round pick. Like, could we not even do that? Like, there's got to be something here to get. I mean, Hopkins is like still a top tier guy. So,
and honestly, we've seen the rumors that Arizona's looking for like a Christian McCaffrey type of package for Hopkins, which, I mean, we've said on the podcast before, I think anybody in their right mind understands that Hopkins, he's 30 years old, 31 years old, and he's still relevant, right? But he's kind of going down towards the end of his career. You're not going to get that kind of package for a wide receiver like that.
No. And so let's say hypothetically, because it's the conversation that we're on, and there is a chance that it sounds like it's, unfortunately for me, going to happen. where do we want to see him go for fantasy football implications? Where would be like, I mean, obviously you could say the Bills or the Eagles, but like from a realistic perspective, where do we want him to go that would make sense for fantasy and for the team? Do we have thoughts there, gentlemen?
I mean, I think the Bills would be a good spot. I think the Bills are in the market for a rookie receiver. Gabriel Davis, a free agent next year. That really did not pan out. He's an inconsistent player. They were much better when they had someone like a Cole Beasley that was a consistent chain mover, a sure-handed guy. And there's a lot of times where, I think Gabriel Davis inconsistent hands. Not sure if he's where he needs to be all the time. And they tried different guys, Jamison Crowder, Isaiah McKenzie, and it just didn't really work out in the slot. I know they did add someone for the slot, which Hopkins isn't going to play that. But I think they need somebody on the other side. And, Move the Sticks talks about it, and they said, you're not going to beat the Chiefs by, trying to, get a bunch of defenders. Mm-hmm. The Chargers got Derwin James, one of the best safeties in the league. They line him up against Kelsey, and Kelsey beats him every time. So, you need to hope that you can outscore these guys. So, just go load up on talent. And I do think with Josh Allen, that'd be a great spot for him for fantasy.
You mentioned the Chiefs. What about, I mean, they lost quite a few wide receivers, and they since Hill has left, Kelsey has been their quote-unquote wide receiver one this last year. They need help with the wide receiver position. Do you think that could be a beneficial spot for him, and he could still see fantasy football success in light of where some of these other wide receivers last year for the Chiefs didn't?
Oh, of course. I mean, if you list the top 6 or 7 high-scoring offenses, and especially if they have a need at the wide receiver 2 position, this is a wide receiver 1, and so it's a really good spot for him.
Okay. Yeti, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I've been saying all along, I think the Giants would be a perfect fit for somebody like DeAndre Hopkins because they have signed a slew of slot wide receivers. They have picked up Darren Waller from the Raiders, but they don't have a true wide receiver 1 or anybody who is capable of really shouldering the load in the wide receiver room. So I think DeAndre, he would be an immediate impact player if he were to be traded there.
I like that. I as a big Dable supporter, I'm all in for it. I would absolutely love that. And it would give Daniel Jones a little bit more credibility as well. Are you feeling okay, Yeti? You sound a little under the weather. I know I was boasting that before I came in here, but it sounds like you also might be sick.
Yeah, I think you got me virtually sick as well.
Oh,
so
damn.
Thanks.
This really is the flu game. Man. Dave, you better get out of here, brother, because this is about to get real nasty.
Yeah.
Speaking of real nasty, Austin Eckler. He felt like he was quote unquote punched in the face because the Chargers dismissed contract extension talks after he could not find a trade suitor for himself. Yikes? Question mark. I mean, I think we all kind of saw the writing on the wall, or at least that I myself did. Are we surprised that he's most likely gonna end up with the Chargers?
Yeah,
no,
I don't think it's a surprise at all, man. He's 30 years old. He's on the last year of his contract. What franchise is really going to trade for him at this time? We're going right into the draft that is loaded with the wide running back talent. So why would anybody be looking to trade for a running back, especially an older running back at this stage?
Sure, and you look at the free agent market right now for running backs, and there's still some bigger names out there that could probably get a 2-year deal, 2 or 3 year deal, depending upon who we're talking about. And you saw somebody like Miles Sanders, who was not an old guy. He still has tread left on those tires, but he went and signed a pretty big deal with the Panthers. And so you start looking at as far as time is concerned, but the market just isn't there for running backs right now. So it was a really unfortunate thing for him because he is a talented running back. But, and I think we're going to talk about this a little bit on ourselves when it comes to running backs in general. But tough look for him because he is one of the top, 3 running backs. I think he finished as number 2 last year and number 1 or 2 the year before. He's a very talented fantasy individual. But nobody wants him because nobody's going to want to pay a higher price for an aging running back, like you just said. Did you guys see, on a completely different subject, we're all on Twitter, we're doing Twitter things. Did y'all see the change to Dogecoin from the tweet up in the top corner. You haven't seen that?
Shout
Have
out
you
to
seen it,
Elon.
Yeti?
Yeah.
Have
I
you
saw
seen
it, and
Yeah,
at first
on-
I thought it was like a glitch or something, but no, that's Elon just fucking with us, man.
Yeah, it's wild. And if you refresh a page, like it'll like flash the Dogecoin thing, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. So I just saw that today for the first time, and I was like, what the hell? Last thing here in the news. Yeti, we talked about in a previous episode being Lamar Jackson's agent. This is not really news. I just saw this today because Lamar Jackson popped up on my Twitter feed, like I was just talking about on Twitter. His email, I think we could be his agents. His email that he has on his profile is info@lamarjacksonenterprises.com. I just wanted to point out how incredibly long that is. Like, you got to shorten that thing up. Nobody's going to want to type all that out on an email, and I think that's probably why he can't get a deal done, is because somebody spells enterprises wrong in the @ thing, and then it doesn't go to the right inbox. So I just saw that. I wanted to point that out. That was it. Let's move on to our sells. So what I think we're going to do here for the sells is we'll go down a list. So I'll start with one, or actually, you know what? Yeti, why don't you start with one? We'll do Dave and then myself, and then we'll just go in a 3-man rotation here. Let's talk about some sells here for Dynasty football. So Yeti, why don't you take it away? Give us your first sell.
All right. So my first sell that I brought to the table is the true degenerate himself, Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley is one of my sells this offseason because people are kind of talking about him like he is a league winner, right? They're kind of banking on him coming back from this 2-year hiatus that he's been on and returning to the form that he was in with Atlanta. So in Atlanta, his last year that he was there without Julio, he finished as a top 10 wide receiver, saw 140 targets, and then he got traded to Jacksonville this past season for pretty cheap, I would say. He got traded for a 5th-round pick this year and then a 4th-round pick next year. Now, Calvin Ridley is also 28 years old, and he's joining an offense that is filled with weapons. And I'm just having a hard time seeing him really return to wide receiver 1 status. So if you have somebody in your dynasty league that is looking at Calvin Ridley as, the promised one, then I am looking to sell him for, maybe a early 2nd-round pick, maybe a late 1st-round pick next year. I think that's kind of the value you can get for him.
You agree with that, Dave?
Yeah, and Ridley's very interesting. So I was on a show maybe 2 months now, but when Ridley was about to be reinstated, and it got pretty heated because the one guy just wrote an article and was all fired up how he's going to be, a top 5, top 10 guy, and the host of the show was like, I got him at like 38. And I was like, well, I guess you can call me Goldilocks because I'm right in the middle. I got him right around like 23, 24 in my rankings. I do see the upside, but like Yeti said, it's probably going to be more spread out. And so I do a lot of dynasty price check threads. And so I did one for Ridley and for 111. This is super flex 111. It was 56%, 111. 44 Ridley, and it was actually 50-50 with about 600 votes for 112. And so right about at that fringe, I don't know if you can get an additional future 2nd, but maybe a future 3rd or, a late 3rd this year. And Ridley, it all depends on who you're playing with. I had Jagger May on the show with my co-host, and Ridley was all over the board with us as well, where somebody had him at like 13 and, somebody had him at like 30. And I think, again, I had him at like 23, 24. So know your league mates.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody's a Ridley truther, that's your target.
Absolutely. I mean, we've touched on Ridley before here, but he hasn't played in a year and a half, right? He got the case of the SADs, so he took a step back, which is fine. And then he got suspended because he went full degen. So he hasn't played in a while. When he was okay, right? But he was playing with an aging Matt Ryan. The Falcons had not looked great, and then he bailed out. So I like this take quite a bit, to be honest with you. He would also be somebody I would look at selling if you can find that truther in your league, because in some leagues, people probably there's a variety of people in every league that you play with, right? There's some people who the whole league is tuned in and they all have very similar thoughts as far as certain players. But yeah, I would look to move them if I could. Dave, who did you bring as your first sell candidate, my friend?
Yeah, who would I like to start with? I'll start with the quarterback. I'm going to go Trey Lance. And so
you dog.
Trey Lance is a very, very interesting guy. When you look at the situation, you have Sam Darnold just signed. Then you have the comments at the owners meeting where, Brock Purdy, if healthy, would be the starter. He's the lead dog in the house. Trey Lance truthers are hurting. But when it comes down to it, there's still a lot of faith in Trey Lance. And so I did a price check thread for Trey Lance immediately after the owners meeting comments. And I'm like, man, Trey Lance is going to be a buy low. And nope, 107 and the super flex. And he is not dropping in price whatsoever. And so, I mean, there's always the hopeful scenario of he's the guy. And if not, he's traded. But there's not a very pessimistic view of he's actually going to be the backup. I don't think anyone that, and I will say this, and I did comment, these are Twitter polls, and if you have Trey Lance on your roster, you're probably hitting that pot that Trey Lance is worth 106, 105. And if you don't have Trey Lance on your roster, you probably didn't believe in him as much to begin with. You might be hitting that 203, 201. So, I mean, what do you guys think Trey Lance would be worth? If you had the 107 and I had Trey Lance, Superflex League, I had Trey Lance, and I said it on the trade block. And what about you, Slapdog?
Man, that's tough because you got to understand, first and foremost, I am a Trey Lance believer.
Yeah, this
I got
is
his
a
phone
Trey
number.
Lance podcast. Yep.
Yeah, we're a pro Trey Lance podcast. Okay, let's look at it from a realistic perspective here for just a second, and then we'll go into the fantasy side of things because I want to talk about what a unique situation this entire freaking mess is, right? Mm-hmm. Jimmy Garoppolo, not a good quarterback. I don't think he's a good quarterback. You are shaking your head that you might agree with that. I know Yeti's thoughts on Jimmy G. Not a good quarterback, right? They traded a lot. They gave up quite a bit to go get Trey Lance in the draft. And then they didn't play him his first year, really. They kind of sprinkled him in like the salt guy meme. And then he was slated to be the guy this following year. Very early on, he tears his leg. Jimmy G's back. And then Jimmy G gets hurt. And now they have Brock Purdy in here, Mr. Irrelevant. I have to give kudos to the coaching that is involved with this team because you can take mediocre quarterbacks and they still find success. So Jimmy G was still finding success. And then Brock Purdy, somebody who, based on his draft capital, probably would never see an NFL field in his entire life. He did well. But realistically, you look at this situation, Kyle Shanahan did well. The coaching staff did well. And that it's you don't need a Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts. You don't need greatness there. You need a game script manager. So that's why I think Purdy has done so well. And this is my opinion. So I'm stating that from the beginning, but you don't need a great quarterback. You need a manager who does your checkdowns, who can get the ball in the playmakers' hands. Now, fortunately for the 49ers, they have a lot of playmakers on their team. They've got Kittle, Debo, Ayuk. They had Juszczyk. I mean, the whole team was filled with success, and so you have a quote-unquote mediocre quarterback, and they are still able to find success because of the scheming that they're able to do in that offense. So now that I've gotten that out of the way, you have to look at this situation as well as Purdy's not going to be ready by the start of the season. I firmly believe that Purdy is not going to be healthy with the surgery that he just had by week 1 of the NFL. And the reports that I've seen in an injury like this, you're looking at like November, December timeframe as far as when that injury will be fully healthy again. So no matter what happens, he's unless he is like Wolverine and he just heals overnight, he's not probably going to be ready for week 1 in the NFL, leaving Trey Lance and Sam Darnold. Okay. I think Sam Darnold was a great piece for them to add because we saw what happened when their 4th-string quarterback came in, and then it got to the point where Debo was almost, I think it was Debo or Juszczyk was almost their quarterback, which I would love to see for chaos reasons. But it's going to be Lance. We've seen the Darnold experiment with the Jets. We've seen it with the Panthers. Trey Lance is better than Sam Darnold, I think. And we haven't seen him because he struggled to stay healthy as of late. But you have the potential for a much higher ceiling with Trey Lance at the quarterback position than the other two, in my opinion, due to the fact, and granted he is coming off of a leg injury, but due to his mobility, if he can advance the ball down the field successfully through the air, I think that Trey Lance could be a very big game changer for him. That was a very long spiel to try and answer your question, Dave, so I sincerely apologize for that.
Your show, man.
The 107, if I had the 107 for Trey Lance, I'd probably do it. I think I would do it. I think I would buy Trey Lance for the 107. I think my whole spiel just talked me into it. I would like to go just a little bit later. Like a 109 would make me feel much more comfortable, but I think the 107 is where I get slightly like, do I do this? Do I not do this? But I think I'd take the chance personally.
I kind of wonder if you could stretch out a 2024 first for Trey Lance. If you can get a late first, I would much rather have like a 2024 first at this stage. Like if Trey Lance is just sitting on your bench and you don't know what to do with him at this point, get as much value as you can from him, because I'm in the camp of what has Trey Lance done? You know, we talk about his upside, right, with his rushing ability. We haven't seen it in the NFL though. And it's starting to kind of look like a failed experiment in San Francisco, that they can just plug and play these quarterbacks and they'll find success. So I kind of think Trey Lance's days with San Francisco are numbered.
It's tough, and I don't disagree at all with the fact that he's got the upside, especially in that system, and it's copy and paste. And like Brock Purdy, for fantasy football purposes, wasn't that great. I mean, he's 200 yards, and he had like the rushing touchdown like the first game, but it's like 200 yards to like copy and paste. Jimmy Garoppolo, Brock Purdy, Nick Mullins, Slapdog, whoever wants to play quarterback. And Move the Sticks talks about this right now with Trey Lance, Brock Purdy, and Sam Darnold. Their overall contract for those three guys is $13 million. And so they have that, and other teams are paying, $40 million, $35 million for quarterbacks that are, average to above average guys. We'll just say that. And, my only issue with Trey Lance is the price. It's never whether I like a player or don't like a player, but I cannot say with certainty, even if Brock Purdy let's say Brock Purdy is not available till week 5. Trey Lance has 4 weeks, and he's going to have a very short leash. If he doesn't go out and they win games because of him, they've already said Brock Purdy can go in there. I think Sam Darnold might be insurance for a trade. What if the Tennessee Titans are rumored to be trying to come up? What if the Titans, who are very familiar with Trey Lance, with Ron Carthen, they could go and move, pick 11 for Trey Lance, or maybe if he's not worth that to them, maybe something later. And they ride that Brock Purdy contract, and they know they can copy and paste do that. Brock Purdy he's got it's like $700,000 guaranteed over 4 years. Like it is
that's
ridiculously low contract. Yeah, that's another. I wrote an article about how the 7th round picks make less money than NIL deals, but that's again for another day. But when you look at it, 107 is tough, and 107 could be a cheap deal if he comes out there, plays well. You see that rushing upside on top of that 200 yards and 2 every week. You're seeing 30, 40 rushing yards every week. You could have a monster fantasy guy for 107. That is an easy smash. But you could also see, like Yeti said, you could see where he's the backup and you just paid 107.
Sure.
And that's tough.
Sure. And I think it's equally risky on buying or selling him at that 107, because you could end up having a QB1 on your team if you hit on it. But
19 career starts in college.
Yeah. And that's a problem. But
Dave, I'm
riding him.
Oh, I just want to ask Dave real quick. I want to ask, a guy in a similar situation as Trey Lance, not identical, but he was drafted in Trey Lance's class, Mac Jones. How do you compare Mac Jones's value right now in Dynasty to somebody like Trey Lance? Sorry, we're kind of going off subject, but they're kind of
I like this
relevant.
question a lot.
Dave,
You're
on
muted
mute.
there, brother.
I asked people who my next price check should be, and they said Mac Jones. And then somebody tried to start one without me, and I tried to retweet it for him, but it's not getting many votes. But it's not as high as Trey Lance. Even like Daniel Jones is not as high as Trey Lance. I think Daniel Jones was 110. He was 110. Brock Purdy was 208. So if you're going to go and do that 107, throw the 208 and get Purdy, get your insurance. But Purdy was 208. Nobody's believing the Purdy stuff. And then Jordan Love was 110. But Mac Jones is probably in that range of like a late first in Superflex. But the news that just came out recently, that might drop it even more. I will say this. I don't think that Mac Jones is ever going to be a QB1.
No.
I don't think he's ever going to be QB1. I think the offense is just not designed that way. But I do like the Bill O'Brien hire. I think that is good for Mac Jones. I mean, you had Matt Patricia calling plays. Like, that was the dumbest stuff I've ever seen. And, like, Mac Jones was not in a great spot. If they traded Mac Jones, I don't know where he goes, but I never see him. Like, I don't even know if he has a Kirk Cousins ceiling.
I was going to say it's kind of like a Jimmy G-esque.
Yeah. And if the Raiders didn't sign Jimmy G, that would be like kind of the logical, like, swap 14 and 7 and just call it a day. But I don't know. I just don't know I don't even know if there's a landing spot for him. Like, who trades for him?
I like it. Granted, I have a quarterback or like a fourth of one right now, but like I wouldn't want him on my team. Like I would not, like, as a Cardinals fan, I would not want him. And granted, like I said, Kyler Murray's his own. There's a whole thing going on there, and for fantasy purposes, it doesn't really. He hasn't amounted to much. So granted, like you said, the play calling there could definitely attribute to some of that, but it's not been a great start for him. And this makes it even more murky. Like I would much rather have Trey Lance than Mac Jones, and I would take that every day. Now, what is interesting to me is that people would rather have Trey Lance and Daniel Jones. That's interesting to me because I think I'd rather have Daniel Jones than Trey Lance. So I don't know.
Yeah, at least with Daniel Jones, you have security now with that contract that he just got from New York. So that's kind of, I mean, I get it. Like Trey Lance, we've talked about his upside, but he hasn't done anything. That's my big thing with quarterbacks, especially, is prove it. Prove it to me that you are worth this high draft capital. And he hasn't. Obviously, he's been hurt, but even in college, it's like, what are they seeing? Just his rushing upside against division or double 1A guys? I don't know.
Right now, I have Daniel Jones at my QB 12, but once I put the rookies in, he's going to drop out of my top 12 probably. I mean, and this is always a funny experiment because, like, if you said, do you want Daniel Jones or Bryce Young or CJ Stroud? I mean, you probably want Bryce Young or CJ Stroud, but it sounds a lot closer than if I said Daniel Jones or the 102 in Superflex. You'd be like, hell no. Like, what are you crazy?
Yeah.
But then you put the names to it and it kind of sinks the value of the pick. I did that in a draft. It was like, you pick Josh Jacobs or Jahmyr Gibbs in a draft. And like they're right next to each other in a startup. But like Jahmyr Gibbs is the 102 and one quarterback. And so it does kind of zap the value out when you put those names to it. People they like that lottery ticket.
Yeah, but you could also argue we're going off on a quite the tangent now, which is fine. I enjoy this conversation. You could also argue landing spots for these players are make and break for an entire career for them. Like you look at whoever's going to go to the Panthers, probably Stroud. I think is one of the main contenders at this moment. That the rumor is. That's gross. I feel bad for the guy because it's a shit show of a situation, and the Texans are no different. I mean, the Texans maybe just a hair better, but that's not saying much. Like, they're both in really bad places. So whether it be Young or Stroud, like, yeah, the promise of them is nice, but their landing spot just makes it such a tough sell.
It's awful. They traded DJ Moore and their first round pick next year.
And their second.
Yeah, and their second. And so like they don't have the draft capital and then everyone got a 1-year deal. Hayden Hurst got a 1-year deal. They got a 1-year deal for DJ Chark, Adam Thielen, 1-year deal. So like you got like no certainty for them. And then you got, CJ Stroud, the same thing. And like we hope that it's going to be a Kyle Shanahan type of an offense. It's a very unknown offensive coordinator over there. Yeah, I wrote my rookie rankings article, and the first thing I did was I set the table with the landing spots, and it was like gross. It's just it's bad. Like even the Colts and the Raiders aren't great landing spots as far. The Raiders are better, but
the Colts are probably a little better as well. Like I'd rather the quarterback that lands there, I might get just a tingle more excited for than the Panthers or the Texans, just due to the weapons.
I agree. Actually, I'll take that back. I didn't have the Colts as gross. I like Shane Steichen. I think he was good with the Chargers, good with the Eagles. And you have Pittman and Pierce, which is pretty solid.
And JT, of course, to help alleviate and make the run game a little bit more serious. You want to talk about the Colts? Let's talk about the Colts, Dave. I got Michael Pitti City as my first sell. And I am excited for whatever quarterback lands there, but I'm not excited for Michael Pittman. And I love Michael Pittman as an athlete. I was very sad for his production last year because I was banking on a little bit more production than what we got out of him. He finished as wide receiver 20 in PPR formats. He's a wide receiver 1 for the Colts. And I believe that you can still get some good value for Michael Pittman, but I have some concerns regarding his production for the foreseeable future. So at this moment, like we just talked about, a rookie quarterback is slated to start there. Historically, that typically doesn't bode very well for the wide receiver room because this rookie quarterbacks need a little bit of an adjustment period. Not only that, but this is a brand new coaching staff, as you just mentioned. And I do like Steichen. I always say his name wrong, but he looked at that offense last year with the Eagles was explosive. He did well with the Chargers, like you mentioned. Like I'm excited for him because of his offensive mind and what he has shown he's been able to do. So that does excite me. But the icing on the cake here is this is the last year of Michael Pittman's contract, and he will be a free agent after this year at 27 years old. So he's aging a little bit. And then that puts the question is, where does he go after this year? So for a dynasty, I'd probably look at selling him because there's a decent chance that he does not finish higher than wide receiver 20 like he did this last year. And then he's a free agent. He could find himself in an even worse spot. He could be with the Panthers next year because they're going to be looking for a wide receiver 1. And so what does that look like? I would look at selling Michael Pittman while you can now because his value could potentially get a lot worse. Not because of him as a player, but because of his landing spot and his situation that he's in. So that's who I brought as number 1. We agreeing with that? Disagreeing with that?
I would have to see what you're going to be able to get back. I don't know. I think a lot of people have the same concerns that you have. It's Gardner Minshew for now, and it could be Gardner Minshew for
I love Gardner Minshew.
Good portion. And Gardner Minshew, he was able to provide some production. But Anthony Richardson, Will Levis, whoever's going to be the quarterback there, whether it's Hendon Hooker in the second round. I don't know if people are going to be excited about that, and especially if it's Anthony Richardson. So you'd have to find an optimistic, Pitti City fantasy footballers, Mike Wright kind of a guy. Because if not, like if it was me, I'm not interested in Pittman right now. I wouldn't pay up.
Late first round? No. Early second round.
Everything that you laid out, like okay. I just. And I didn't even think about the age. Like, that's a smart point. But I'm just like, like there's wide receiver 2s or a dime a dozen. And Pittman, I'm not going to pay up for Pittman when I can just draft somebody or like get somebody for a cheaper cost. Because I feel like you could get another wide receiver 2 at a cheaper cost.
205. Would that do it if you had the 205?
Okay. Oh, for sure. I probably early 2s. But like once I get past that, like, I got to make sure like I get Zay Flowers, I would have higher than Pittman. I would have Addison higher than Pittman, JSN higher than Pittman. I don't know if I have Quentin Johnston. That's probably where you got me. Like I'd probably be like, okay, give me Pittman.
Okay. Yeah, that it's interesting. Yeti, do you agree with the selling the Pittman? I know that you own him in Dynasty, so this might hit home for you a little bit.
Yeah, no, I thought about putting Pittman as one of my sells as well, just because when you look at his stats from an efficiency standpoint, so let's look at his yards per route run, his yak. Let's look at his A dot. He isn't very efficient with the targets that he's seeing. And the reason why he is finishing as high as he is right now is because he is seeing a high volume of targets compared to other wide receivers. That's why he's consistently finishing in that wide receiver 2 range that we've seen in PPR. But it's what is he doing with these touches? What's that offense going to look like if they add another piece? Let's say he signs, a long-term contract with the Colts. Let's say they get a true wide receiver 2 in that offense. Then what happens to Pittman's value once there isn't 140 targets coming his way?
It's funny you mentioned that because when I was kind of getting my stats together and everything, I was like, oh, Alec Pierce is fighting for targets. And I think it was like Pittman saw almost double the targets that Pierce saw. I think Pierce only saw I want to say 70 something. I think it was. And I was like, oh, that's not true at all. Like Michael Pittman sees a shit ton of targets, but it's a great point because what happens when if they add more weapons to that wide receiver room. So yeah, I he was my first sell. Yeti, who are you bringing in as a second sell?
Do we want to get frisky or just write it safe?
Let's do it. Let's do it. It's
right,
Wednesday night.
Yeah.
We're feeling crazy.
Yeah, let's do it, man. So this sell might raise some eyebrows at first. And I just want to preface this by saying I'm a huge fan of this former Heisman winner. But I am selling Devontae Smith right now. The big reason why I am selling a 24-year-old that is coming off a top 10 season is because his stock right now is at the ceiling, I feel like. I feel like the return that you could get for Devontae Smith right now is probably highest it'll be in the next year and a half. I say that because in the 7 games that Dallas Goedert was gone from Philly's offense, Smith he did see 9 targets a game, 89 yards per game, 4 touchdowns in total, and he had 18 fantasy points per game. He finished as, I think, wide receiver 4 is what I saw from week 10 to week 17 when Goddard was out / coming back. But in the first 9 games with both A.J. Brown and Dallas Goedert in, Devontae Smith, his targets went down 3 per game. His yards went down 35 yards per game, and he saw 1 touchdown less. But the main drop off was that he was seeing only 12 fantasy points per game. So in that range, he was around wide receiver 26 in PPR format. So we're looking at a wide receiver 2 numbers when this offense is fully healthy. And I just don't think that with A.J. Brown and Dallas Goedert fully healthy now, that Devontae Smith is going to see that wide receiver 10 status this upcoming season.
You're nodding your head. You agree with that, Dave?
Yeah. No, I like the, anyone that ends on a high note, like it's always, what have you done for me lately? And Devonta Smith is an excellent receiver. I mean, he's better than any receiver in this draft class. He's a good receiver. But again, like you said, there's a selling point, and he was very inconsistent last year when Goddard was healthy. And then when Goddard was healthy, he was good. And so, this offense kind of like they pick their poison every week. And when everybody's healthy, the defense doesn't know who to cover, and you don't know who to play. Might be A.J. Brown this week, might be Devonta Smith next week, and Dallas Goedert. Then next week, Jalen Hurts has 3 rushing touchdowns. And it's not that I don't like Devonta Smith. I have him ranked really high. I think I have him in my 12th receiver or 11th receiver in Dynasty. But again, it's all about the return. You don't sell a guy that you're going to get, okay value for. You sell a guy at his peak. And so, this could definitely be a peak for him.
What are you selling for? What are you selling for?
Like I said, I think he's better than any receiver in this class. I know that people are all over JSN I was getting ripped apart this week because I did a wide receiver only rookie draft, and I was just like, tag a friend, do it, and I'm taking Jordan Addison 101. Oh my god, did people lose their mind? What? You're such an idiot. I'm like, oh, and this fun exercise, well, that means nothing. I took Jordan Addison, and I'm such an idiot. I mean, I just, but yeah, I got roasted all day. But when it comes down to it, like, I think JSN is going to be a good receiver. I think Addison's going to be a good receiver, but they're both probably be wide receiver twos.
I mean, let me ask you this. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it's got to be somewhat difficult because somebody who's so ingrained like yourself in Dynasty football, these landing spots could definitely sway their ADPs 100%. Like,
either of them go to the Patriots, it's like,
exactly. So that makes it a little bit more difficult because right now a lot of it's more speculation than anything else, and we're all reading stuff every day about mock drafts and what could happen in the draft and this and this and this. But when the draft really happens, and you can mock draft fantasy players all day long. I do it myself, but knowing where they're going is certainly going to change their price quite a bit. So Devontae Smith, 103. You sell him for that, or you want more than that?
103s. I mean, are we in a super flex?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I'd probably do that.
Okay. All right.
So if you're looking at like the receiver range, like a 106 and a future second, I got the Fantasy Pros trade value chart up here, and he is a 56, and that would put him about pick 4 or 5 in a super flex, and about pick 4 in one quarterback.
Gotcha. Yeah, I actually like this. Yeti and I have talked about him previously, so I'm not surprised by this necessarily. And I like Devontae Smith as a wide receiver too. But if you can sell him at a high value, like, this is probably where his value is going to be highest. I agree with that a lot. I even went as far as I was like, okay, when will he be the guy? And AJ Brown's got like a hell of a long contract with the Eagles, so he'll be around forever. So it's more likely than not, Devontae Smith will probably end up going somewhere else when his contract is up, because he was going to want to get paid a lot of money, and they're already paying AJ Brown a lot of money. So I like this. I like this quite a bit. Dave, who are you bringing in as your second sell?
I'm going to go Ramondre Stevenson, and it's partly I just don't trust the Patriots. I like the Bill O'Brien hire. I like Ramondre Stevenson. He finished as a top 10 running back, and he actually got pretty good volume. My co-host was like, I don't trust Patriot running backs, and they never get, enough carries. And I was like, yeah, over 15 touches a game last year, where, they did give him, he had 277 touches, which is, like 15 or 16 touches a game. And the receiving work was good. But I got to go to the NFL Combine, and I got to talk to the running backs, and I asked every running back, what teams have you met with? Almost everybody said the Patriots, and I was just like, that's a red flag. And like, the Patriots are the team that would take Bijan Robinson in the first round and just say, I don't care what everybody thinks. They would take a Jahmyr Gibbs in the second round and completely zap Ramondre Stevenson's value. I know they took 2 running backs last year. They took 2 running backs the year before. They always, find a way to get a running back. And for that reason, I would try to get some value while I have it. It's I could definitely be egg in my face. I'm not going to sell Ramondre Stevenson for 205 or something like that. But if I could get a late first round and a third round pick, or a late first round and a future second round pick, I would do that, because people saw him last year. He does have a lot of stands out there. There's a lot of people that do like Ramondre, including me. But you just can't trust Bill Belichick.
I think that more than anything else is the narrative that is completely truthful. Like, it's so difficult to trust the Patriots in general from an offensive perspective. Like, I don't want to touch any player, let alone the run. I mean, the running back was at least last year for certain was really the only piece of that offense I was interested in owning. And what do you do now? And like you just mentioned, that could definitely bring some concern there if the Patriots are meeting with a bunch of running backs. And not to mention, Ramondre's, he's got a year after this year. So he's got this year and next year, and then he's an unrestricted free agent, right? So he's already 25 years old. We typically see 26-ish, 27 is where those high tier running backs kind of start to fall off to begin with. So while he's not there, he's getting closer to it. And if they sign one of those top guys, he's done. He's a backup running back for the Patriots for the next 2 years, and or kind of like a split backfield at best. So it makes it really difficult.
Yeah,
you have
and I think if you can sell him, now is the time to do so, like right before the draft, because like Dave said, his value is going to go fucking through the floor as soon as they draft Bijan in the first round, or like you said, Gibbs in the second round. Like any rookie running back that gets drafted by the Patriots is going to be a huge red flag for Stevenson. And I know this because I have Stevenson in our Dynasty League of Record, and nobody fucking wants to touch it.
We're shitting on you today, Eddie, aren't we?
Yeah, it's fine. Just shit on my team, but
yeah, it's tough. I agree with that. I like you mentioned, Yeti, I think we've had conversations about like you moving him, and I'm like, I don't want to touch that man with a 10-foot pole. So I get it completely.
Yeah, and if you can't get the value, definitely do not sell. I think that this is an opportunity you can get value that it might be half price in a month from today. But if you hold through the draft and they don't draft somebody, O'Brien like Lamar Miller got a pretty healthy workload. And so if they do have a running back like that, he could get a healthy workload as long as Bill Belichick doesn't have too much influence on what's going on with that. But it's just, again, it's a sketchy situation. If you can get a good price, take it.
My second guy is somebody who, if you could get a good price, I would definitely take it. That is Derrick Henry, running back for the Titans. Derrick Henry, Yeti, we talked about this going into last year a little bit. So, man, the king himself is the tread on the tires for him is wearing thin. And he finished as RB4 this last year in PPR. He's 29 years old, the bell cow for the Titans. I'm calling it right now. He's not going to finish in the top 5 this year. We said it last year. I'm going to manifest it into existence. I have to give credit to Vrabes because he is the mastermind at finding success with a lackluster group of weapons. I don't know how he does it, but he does every single time. I really thought Derrick Henry last year, and like I said, Yeti, we talked about this almost ad nauseum, but it was an aging offensive line. Derrick Henry's aging. They just gave away A.J. Brown, so they don't really have any wide receivers. They had Robert Woods, and Burks didn't even get on the field really last year. This team is a train wreck. This team is full of train wrecks. You don't know who their quarterback's going to be. Is Malik Willis going to be the guy? Is it Tannehill still? I think they're going to rely on Henry again this year, like they usually do every single year. But my concern is his health and his age, and I would be shopping him around in the league to try and get some value out of him because it's going to take one injury and he's done, in my opinion. I think that's kind of where he's at. And I saw a video of him this last week working out with his shirt off, and he's looking all ripped and shit. And I'm like, this guy's going to live forever. But it's like Kittle said, every single week is like a car crash playing in the NFL. So I'd be looking to sell him because he's not going to be in this league forever, and I don't think he's going to be top 5. I'm saying it now.
Let me ask, what kind of value do you think you could get for Henry right now? And that could be for either Slaps or Dave.
That's tough because nobody's gonna like. You look at it from a realistic perspective. Like if I own Henry, you want to sell the farm for this guy because you don't want to give him up. Because he has intrinsic value. But as somebody who doesn't own Henry, I wouldn't want to spend a shit ton on him. So it's a really tough situation. Like I would, if I owned him, like a late first round is probably from a realistic perspective. If I could get that out of him, I would consider doing that for sure. It would just depend on who has the late first rounds and would they consider it to even begin with. But that's kind of how I look at it. I don't know, Dave. Why don't you share your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, if you're a rebuilding team, or if you don't know if you're a rebuilding team, you're probably a rebuilding team. And so, any running backs over the age of 26, you really want to sell. That's the first thing you sell in a rebuild, and it's the first thing contenders want to buy. And so if I'm a contender and I have Derrick Henry on my team, I'm probably not selling him because I'm probably not going to get what's valuable. Like if I'm a contender and I sell Slapdog Derrick Henry for the 206, I just made his team better, my team worse for pick 18. On the trade chart, it says you can get a late first round pick. I'm not buying that. The deal, I think that, if you get a first, it's going to be a future. And so and here's what I would do. If you have Derrick Henry and you do want to sell him, you do it after the draft. People do not want to give up these new shiny toys, and they're going to want to they're going to give you a late second round pick for Derrick Henry. And again, that's not enough value for me. I'm going to wait till we're setting week 1 lineup. Slapdog's going against Yeti, and he's going, hey, I'm losing by 13 points, and I'm going to go, hey, man, I'm going to be definitely going to be your team is so good. It's really good. I think you're going to be the winner this year. I'll take
gassing
that.
Them up.
I'll take that pick, 112 next year, and you can get Derrick Henry, and I'll even give you a Burger King crown.
And you'll win the league.
See if I can do that, because it really comes down to it. Nobody wants veterans during the draft, but they want them week 1. When those projections come up, especially if you're that's when you make the move. And that's so if you're a rebuilder and you got Austin Eckler, you got Derrick Henry, you got those older running backs, just don't if you can sell them on draft day for a first, then do it. But if you don't sell them during the draft for half price. Be patient, wait till the season starts, and unload them and get max value.
Dave out here playing chess while a lot of us are playing checkers. Love the move. Yeti, what are you thinking?
For my last sell, is that what we're moving on to?
No, Derrick Henry. You agree on sell?
Yeah. I mean, like Dave said, at this point, guys are looking at getting Bijan. They're looking at getting Gibbs, like Tyjae Spears. Like they're looking at these young guys that are coming into the league that are fresh. The last thing anybody's thinking about is Derrick Henry or Austin Eckler, unless you think you're truly a running back away from winning a championship this year. But then again, it's like, do I really want to pay? Like if I'm towards contending, do I want to pay a 108, 109, like 110 for Derrick Henry? Like that's hard right now. But as we get towards the start of the season, if I have a wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3 that's kind of aging, like if I had like Amari Cooper and like a second round pick for Henry, okay, like something like that might make sense, right? But right now it's just hard seeing a first round value on Derrick Henry.
Mm-hmm. Okay, who do you got for your last person there? Wait, is it your turn, Yeti, or is it? I'm getting
Yeti.
all. Okay,
it's my turn. Yep, my last sell. It's funny we're talking about older running backs when I'm about to bring in some youth into the conversation with I kind of cheated here. I put the 101, but I think everybody knows that this is Bijan Robinson. So you probably have the 101 for a reason. Your team was probably horrible last year. And I think that the value for the 101 is at the highest, kind of like Devontae Smith situation. I think the value for the 101 is the highest right now, right before the draft, because we don't know where Bijan Robinson is going. He is, without a doubt, the 101 in every dynasty draft that's going on right now. And I think if you can get a supreme package for the 101, let's say you can get like a 104, maybe another like late round first or even a first in next year's draft. I mean, that's more talent to help your team rebuild, because let's be honest, Bijan is great. He is an elite talent, probably be a great running back in the league for the next few years. But if that landing spot sucks this year, it's going to be rough this year for you at least. So why not get some more talent around your team and then bank for next year at this point?
Dave, you selling or you buying?
I'm selling.
You're selling.
I agree 100%. And so I've wrote an article about it. And 99.9% of teams should sell the 101. I got a shirt. We created a shirt that says I own the 101. Because it's a flex, but it's also a flex if you sell it, because you're going to get a ton. I got a DM right before the show, said, hey man, I got a bunch of picks. I want to go get Bijan. Is 104, 110 and a 2024 mid to late first enough?
What?
That tells you right there.
What?
Yeah, and like the poll, I put it up on a poll, and it's still like that package is winning. And then so I just put up a tweet that said, hey, let me see some recent 101 trades. Superflex, tight end premium sent 103, 203, 24 first, got 101, 401, and Cousins. Superflex, 101 and 109. 101, 109, Derrick Henry, got Lamb, Chubb, 310. I've seen 101 go for Justin Jefferson.
Wow.
101 for Superflex, Trevor Lawrence. I saw I ran another poll. It had like 200 comments, and Ken Walker in the 103, Garrett Wilson in the 103, T. Higgins in the 103.
That's nuts. Like I just don't understand. We don't even know where the hell he's going.
We have no idea where he's going. He is a running back. I mean, it's like, like we thought DeAndre Swift to the Lions was going to be a smash, and DeAndre Swift's a great running back, and that hasn't come to fruition. We're on year 4, and people are still holding out hope. He's
done.
like RB7 in Dynasty ranking. Brandon Cooks, Rashad Bateman, 104 for the 101. Like you can just get so much for it. It just makes so much more sense. Like if you put 101 on a trade chart, it probably is worth more if you put Bijan Robinson in there. I said the opposite for the other guys. If you put Bijan Robinson, it's probably plus 10 points. I mean, everybody wants a piece of this guy. And like we said earlier, could go to the Patriots. He could go to the Eagles, and maybe that's a great spot. Miles Sanders.
There's a lot of mouths to feed, though.
Yeah, Miles Sanders was RB13 last year, but again, he was RB13. And on a consistent basis, he did not feel like RB13.
No.
Because Jalen Hurts is doing this, and, A.J. Brown big this week. And, I mean, who knows where he goes. I'd love to see him. My spot, I'd love to see him on the Bengals. I know the Cowboys.
I think we've said that before, too. Yeah, we've said both those spots.
Cowboys are very interested.
Yeah.
In my mock draft, I did a 3-round mock draft. I did put him on the Eagles. But we don't know. And like, if Patriots could be a spot. Like, we just don't know where
I'd be sad if he ended up with the Patriots because I want him to succeed and find a home. And I think the Bengals and the Cowboys are definitely two like the sexiest places for him to go. Where like I think he could find quite a bit of fantasy output success. But Eagles, I definitely don't want that to happen. And yeah, the Patriots are pretty close to
and what Yeti said was this was perfect. You got the 101 for a reason in most situations. Of course, if you traded for it and you got the 112 and the 101, damn, go ahead. Just go and just knock everybody's heads off. If you're the champ and you have 101, like that's the baller move. But even in that situation, like it's just so hard to pass up the deals that you can get. Of course, don't take a fair deal.
Mm-hmm.
Don't take a fair deal and wait till draft day. If you can. But that being said, if you're worried about landing spot, wait till draft day, the NFL draft day, and say, hey guys, we're doing an auction. He wants Bijan Robinson and sell him before he gets picked somewhere. But you could lose if he goes somewhere that's really juicy, Buffalo, Kansas City, Bengals, something like that. But you could also be sitting there going, man, I just sold 101, I sold 104, 110, and a future first, and he's a freaking Patriot.
I like that. That's a good one, Yeti. I was not expecting you to bring that one to the table, but I think there's some merit there, especially like having this conversation and looking at it from a realistic perspective. Dave, I didn't realize people were going that crazy for that. Like I did not know that was what people were valuing him at. That's a little absurd to me.
It is. And like we did a podcast and I was joking and I said, you got to sell Bijan. You can get 3, 4, 5 first for him. And somebody, of course the Reddit guys are like, well, I'm turning this shit off. I'm like, it's hyperbole. I'm joking. But like you realistically can get Garrett Wilson is worth a high first. And you're selling Garrett Wilson and a 3? Ken Walker and 103? Sign me up. Like I love Bijan, but here you go. Like,
if you can get that value, I would every day, baby, every day. Dave, who you selling as your last sell candidate that you have brought to the table today?
Yeah, and I went back and forth with both Miami Dolphins receivers, and I think people would probably throw tomatoes at me if I said Jalen Waddle. But if you looked at Jalen Waddle's targets last year, it was not good. It was not good. And I looked at it, and I actually took out the non-Tua games, and it still was not good. And so Tyreek Hill is definitely the alpha in that offense. But I'm going to say sell Tyreek Hill. And the reason is he's an older receiver, and you can still get supreme value for him. And in Dynasty, timing is everything. You want to be 1 year early and not 1 year late. You look at Keenan Allen or DeAndre, like how much can you sell DeAndre Hopkins for right now? If you did this before the PED suspension, you could have got a first-round pick. Keenan Allen, you could have got a first-round pick. You try to sell Keenan Allen right now or DeAndre Hopkins, it's too late.
Yeah.
And like Devontae Adams is getting in that same range. So with Tyreek Hill, I think he's wide receiver 6 in the consensus. He finishes top 5 receiver. He got over 9 targets in pretty much every game last year. Sell him. The only thing that people might not want to buy is the Tua situation.
Yeah.
And that could be the only, but he was fine with Teddy Bridgewater. He was fine with escaping my name right now. The other
Skylar Thompson.
Yeah,
Skylar Thompson. I mean, this guy is, and if you're a contender and I wave Tyreek Hill at you, if you got the 111 right now, I'm saying, hey, give me 111 and your pick next year, or 111 and a younger player. You're thinking about that, right?
I think you have to, especially, there was some Tyreek Hill was really, really interesting because you looked at him going into last year and you're like, what's going to happen here? Because he's not tied with Patrick Mahomes anymore. And, it was a chicken or the egg situation. Like, did Patrick Mahomes make Tyreek Hill? Did Tyreek Hill make Patrick Mahomes? And it turns out they're both chickens and they can both make their own eggs. But you didn't know because there was a lot of speculation last offseason with Tua as far as like, is he going to be around? Is he going to even be the starting quarterback? Are they going to look somewhere else? And they decided not to. And Mike McDaniels, he was like really nice to Tua. He made him like a highlight reel of all the things that he did good. And like, he was like, yeah, I want you to be my guy. And which was cool to see, right? I liked seeing that, but we didn't know. And then Tyreek Hill in preseason was like, Tua has one of the best arms I've ever played with. And everybody's like, what kind of shit are you smoking? You were playing with Patrick Mahomes, dude. So there's a lot going on there. But we saw it. We saw him still find tremendous success on a different team. Very clearly talented. Speed kills. He's the cheetah. But he is getting older. So, yeah, I think if I was a contender, 100%. I would be on board with purchasing Tyreek Hill at around the price that you had suggested, Dave, because if I'm really close, that could be the make or break between getting me the championship ring. So yeah, I would probably do that.
So Dave, let me ask you, you brought up Jalen Waddle a little bit. You don't want to go into too much detail about Waddle. But we're gonna talk about him. So, we're saying that, Tyreek Hill, he is older, and I'm not arguing that. Obviously he's 29 years old. We typically see wide receivers fall off a cliff 29, 30 years old. But with Tyreek Hill potentially on his way out, wouldn't you want to maybe buy Jalen Waddle here, or what's preventing you from buying Waddle?
The cost. So I did a, Waddle price check because I was interested, and I was like, oh, he's wide receiver 5. So he's wide receiver 5. And so at that cost, I can go and get somebody, I can get somebody plus for Jalen Waddle, and like you look at this class, like if you really like Jordan Addison or like JSN, like you could get them plus for Jalen Waddle right now. And so that's why I would do it. Like last year, this is my concern for immediate. So last year, and I can't take out the Tua games because it's on the spot, but he had, after the 19 target game, he had 6, 5, 4, 10, 5, 9, 7, 5, 10, 5, 4, 7, 6, 5, 5. Those are targets, not receptions.
I heard a lot of 5s.
Yeah.
A lot of 5s. And so if you're looking at sleeper, they're all yellow. And he had, 2 of those were 4. And so, those resulted in, 1 catch, 2 catch, 3 catch, 5 catch, 3 catch, 5 catch for the last 6 weeks. And so those are tough. And 2 of those games was awesome. Wide receiver 5, wide receiver 10. In 2 of those games, wide receiver 69, wide receiver 99. Then the other one, wide receiver 38, 36. And so you're looking at 2 top 10s, 2 wide receiver 4s, and 2 wide receiver 7s. And so but you can still sell him for a lot. And so I'm not saying Waddle's a bad player. I'm not saying like in the future Waddle could be awesome in 2 years, 3 years. But it's almost like T. Higgins. Like he's a dynasty wide receiver 10, wide receiver 7. But like last year when Chase was on the field, Higgins was not good. You're hoping to get him next year when he's on the Giants or a different team. And so you're not going to be able to play him as a wide receiver 1, but you're paying wide receiver 1 prices. And that's where I'm at. Like I said, wide receiver 5 is what it came out through Dynasty. So the price is pretty high.
As somebody who's tried to purchase Jalen Waddle, I can confirm he's an expensive buy. The seller, he wanted my 103 and Travis Etienne for Jalen Waddle. So
yeah, name value is a lot in Dynasty. And, like, I know it's always kind of like, what have you done for me lately? But like sometimes like some of these names, people, they dig their heels in.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's, and I told, because he was talking to me about that. He's like, hey, this is what they're offering. And I was like, I wouldn't do it. And he goes, yeah, that's what I was thinking too. And I was like, that's a lot to give up for a guy who's a wide receiver 2 on a team. And yeah, he's young. Yes, he is proven to be talented. But a situation that he is currently in is not one in which I would be willing to spend that kind of draft capital, period. So I am not surprised by your take at it because it's just the truth. And if you own Waddle, you look at it from the other side of the mirror, you do want a lot for him because he is a talented young wide receiver. But so it's kind of like a situation in which you probably just hold him because nobody's going to pay the price that you want for him. And you hope that Tyreek Hill, we don't root for injury here, but you hope that he gets his ass off the field so Jalen Waddle can be the wide receiver 1. And that's kind of where you're at because Tyreek Hill is pretty much tied to the Dolphins for the rest of his career. He has a potential out in 2025. And if they don't take that, he's with the team until he's 32 years old. So it's either that or you're hoping Waddle goes to a more favorable situation after his rookie contract because you're just not in a good situation from an offensive perspective with both of them on the field.
And you're hoping Tua doesn't lose all of his brain cells by then.
This is all, and then that's the icing on the cake.
Yep.
Yeah, so he's wide receiver 5 on the trade chart for Fantasy Pros. He's worth 67 points. Jackson Smith and Jigba is 48. Michael Pittman is 45. Jameson Williams is 49. So it's like, what is that, 25% increase? So if you're getting, DK Metcalf is 54. Devonta Smith is 56. Like he's more than those guys. Wow. And again, when I was looking at it, I was looking at the targets and I was writing like guys that like disappointed. And then I was looking at like the value and I'm like, they don't match.
Mm-hmm.
And then I like ran the poll to see what do people think versus this trade chart? And it's like, they think that they can get a ton for him. And, and hopefully, like for that guy, hopefully people are willing to pay it. But, that's a lot. I would not pay that for Waddle right now.
Mm-hmm.
I like it. I like selling Tyreek Hill as well. He is an aging wide receiver, and you can probably still get quite a bit for him, like we just talked about. So my last sell, and then we'll get the hell out of here, is none other than Deebo Samuel. I'm selling Deebo. So I'm a huge fan of Deebo. I truthfully, I really am. He's an athletic freak, but my biggest issue with Deebo is his inconsistency. So he finished as wide receiver 40 in PPR formats this last year. Granted, he did struggle with some injury, so I will say that. He had some injuries last year that kind of took him off the field, but my overarching concern for him is this offense, plain and simple. There are so many mouths to feed with Christian McCaffrey. You got Kittle coming back, Ayuk, and then you add Deebo to this mix. And then the icing on the cake that we talked about just a little bit earlier is who the hell is even going to be the quarterback for this guy? So it's a frustrating situation. He's a 27-year-old wide receiver. So he's kind of like right in those prime years, so to speak, where it's like you could squeeze a little bit more juice out of it, or the juice could already be squeezed. I kind of lean in the camp that I think the juice is already going to get squeezed. So I would be selling him. He still holds a lot of name value, like you were talking about, Dave. There's even more concern here. So this team is not going anywhere in the foreseeable future as far as some of these great assets that I was speaking about. So George Kittle, he's got a potential out in 2024. If not, he will be there until the end of the 2025 season. Ayuk is not an unrestricted free agent until after the 2024 season. Christian McCaffrey, unrestricted free agent after the 2025 season. Debo has a potential out after 2024, and if not, he becomes a UFA into 2026. So this team is going to, like, those assets are all going to be there for the next couple of years together. There's a lot of mouths to feed there. So I don't want any part of it. As far as Ayuk or Debo definitely holds the higher value than Ayuk. I'd be selling him now while you can. And that's it. That's what I got. You guys agree with that?
Yeti?
Yeah. I was writing off Debo last year. He was one of my fades coming off that. He had a top 10 season with all the running production that we had seen from him. And I had said, he's not built to be a running wide receiver back. He's not fit to play that role. And you can only do that so many times. You can only go through the middle so many times before you get hurt. That's what we kind of saw last year. He kind of fell off in that regard because he wasn't rushing the ball as much with Christian McCaffrey there, and they also worked Elijah Mitchell back from injury. So I think if you can get a first round pick out of Debo still, I'd take that in a heartbeat. Like, I would rather have Quentin Johnson or like Addison if you can get him that late, Zay Flowers, those type of guys. I would much rather have those guys than Debo at this current juncture.
Yeah, I would sell if you can. I don't know how much you can get. I know that people's values vary. And so my value, I mean, we did our wide receiver ranking show just a couple weeks ago, and I probably came off as the biggest Debo hater because I think I had him at like 31, 30. For all the reasons you said is why I'm down on him. And so I would not be acquiring for, any cost. And same thing last year. He was my like bust candidate. Like we did our bus show, and I'm like, he had all of that production when he was basically getting like 50% dominator rating, and he was getting running back, and like they're not going to use him in the regular season like that. That's like playoffs. Yeah, like they're looking in a tournament to use him like that. But then they paid all that for Christian McCaffrey, and then you never saw him really do those things. And he's got a history of injuries, and one good year. And so, like for me, if you can get Debo for a late second, like, okay, that's where I'm at. But I'm pretty low on Debo.
You think you could find, not in your league specifically, but in leagues out there, his name value alone, you think you could sell him for an earlier second round, just based on
maybe?
on name value?
The value chart says you can. The value chart says that he's worth Zay Flowers, and Zay Flowers in the mock drafts that I'm doing is, in the early second. So if you're looking at like 203 for Debo, somebody might do that. And like I said, values vary. He was much higher with some of the other guys on the show than me. I just happened to be the guy that had the lowest. I was like probably RB, like wide receiver 30. And his style is just not for me. And his it's just, yeah, I'm really high on Ayuk.
I think you should be. I think especially the way you want to talk about things that you did for me recently. Last year he kind of came into his own a little bit, and we saw that. So he's a lot cheaper than Debo. Mm-hmm. He's a lot cheaper than Debo, and there's probably a pretty good chance that he finishes better than Debo this year. There's a lot of variables involved with that, but
I'm a route runner guy, and so like we all have types, and like I'm okay with that. Like I like craftsmen, I like route runners, and like he's like a reception perception. Brandon Ayuk is a guy that is good. Like I think Deontay Johnson's like a buy low. Like those kind of guys that like they're always open. I like those kind of guys. And he's an athlete. He's going to beat you with size and speed and all that stuff. And Brandon Ayuk, he's a good athlete, but he's going to beat you with his route running. And I think he's an underrated route runner. And so I got to offset those guys because it's not really a high pass volume offense. And so I have Ayuk a little higher than the average, and I have Debo a little behind.
I think that's fair. I would tend to agree with you on that, just because we saw it. We saw it happen. And Ayuk, traditionally, he's seen a lot of his value. He saw his best year when he played running back for a quarter of the damn season. So, like, that's I agree with you completely.
100%.
All right, gentlemen, that's it. That's all we have for the cells today. So, this was fun. Dave, we will definitely have to have you back on the show again at some point. I love talking Dynasty football, especially because it's something that we don't get to do a whole heck of a lot around here as much as we probably should. And now's the time to do it because it's the off season and what the hell else is going on. So
we have no off seasons in Dynasty.
That's true.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, we just got Yeti into. We got a lot of our group here at Leather Brains. This was their first full year in Dynasty football, so this is their first off season, and they're starting to see it all come together and the picks and the offseason trading, and it makes it fun. So
anyone that played franchise mode in Madden, like this is
yeah. I'm ready to be a real life GM now.
Yeah. Love it. Yeah.
So Dave, before we get out of here, one more time, where do you live at? Where can all of the Brainiacs find you and all your work and everything that you got going on, my friend?
It's 253. I'm just kidding. It's at Dynasty Dorks, and you can find me on TikTok or on Twitter. And then SGPN Fantasy, anywhere you listen to your podcast or anywhere you watch stuff on YouTube. But yeah, DMs are open. I'm doing this thing where just DM me a trade or something, and I'll throw it out to the crowd and let people. I'll give you my feedback in the DM or in the chat, but I'm throwing it out and letting people answer the questions. And it is easier if you do it before you make the trade. I will say that. Do not send me a trade and then tell me to grade it. Because if I give you an F, don't pout. Like, I'm not going to be like,
that's always the worst. Like, we've gotten that on our show a lot too, where people will DM us and they'll be like, I just made this trade. What do you think? And I'm like, I wouldn't have done that. And then they're like, well, fuck you then. And I'm like, dude, you asked me. So
yeah, don't ask, don't tell us to grade your trade unless you want honest feedback. But it's much better if you ask ahead of time and I can tell you what's going on. Because yeah, I had it yesterday where somebody said like, yeah, I did this. I like the other side. He's like, well, I'm this side. And I'm like, well,
you're like, well, I still like the other side.
Yeah, sorry, buddy.
Oh shit. Go give him a follow, Dynasty Dorks. Go check out his podcast. We appreciate having you here today. Like I said, we would love to have you back down the road as maybe after the draft, because
yes, sir,
it's coming.
Yeah.
So we appreciate your time, and we
are
out.
If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you tune into our new releases every week on your favorite podcast app. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and check out leatherbrains.com for all of your fantasy football needs. And remember, Brainiacs, a championship should be more than a fantasy.